And I'm sure that there was some real concern about the neighbors, but there also had to be a sense of smugness that they'd found out something nobody else knew, and then it all comes crashing down around them when things don't develop as expected in 1844. Well, the members of that Millerite group, who then go on to become Adventists, it seems to me, and I need to thank Bull and Lockhart for this, it's not original with me, but they're feeling tremendously peripheral, as you suggest, and what do they want to do about that? What they're going to do is two things, I think. First of all, they're going to go out of their way to turn the sources of their marginality into things that they can regard as, in fact, sources of superiority. Okay, I think that happens, so that you've got this sense that the very things that people are mocking us for are, in fact, the things that make us really special and valuable. And so I think that's a tremendously important device that a community can employ if it's feeling under pressure. And then, so actually three things, Adventists get into the business of re-narrating actually the whole history of Christianity so that it's all on a trajectory headed for them, and right. There are folks who are the antecedents of Adventism who can be detected in throughout the Christian past. And then finally, there's this effort to develop a whole set of counter-institutions so that we don't have to feel excluded from institutional life in America, because we've got our own institutional life. Not only do we have churches, but we've got a complete school system at a time when even public schools weren't all that widespread. But then we've got healthcare institutions, we've got food factories, we've got a whole range of places, so that in theory everybody who is a member of the church can be employed by the church, or at least in vast numbers. That's it seems to be possible for a long period in the church's history in North America. And so this whole alternative set of institutional structures creates an America that's distinctively Adventist. And there's a place where folks who have otherwise been very peripheral can be at home, with the result, it seems to me, that again, that peripheral quality is there, but it's not there as it were because Adventists have been forced into that space. I think they were originally by the mockery and rejection they experienced after the Great Disappointment. But at some point, as that becomes increasingly valorized, they develop this whole institutional structure. It's got its own sort of momentum. And now, why would you want to be out in this wider world when you've got an educational and professional track that can just keep you taken care of in this alternate world?
Like as a kid, I loved reading about battles. Mm-hmm. And there were never like Seventh-day Adventist generals.
No.
There were never Seventh-day Adventist, heroic fighters. Like the biggest military heroes we had were medics.
Right.
That I read
Desmond
about.
Doss, the Medal of Honor winner of World War II, being.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I read about medics, but
right.
that just didn't do it for me. I mean, that wasn't.
Right.
And then when I loved battles, and so Adventists were completely absent from that. And I love politics. And you never hear that, how's Barack Obama going to capture the Adventist vote? Or, Barack
right.
Obama will be flying into Loma Linda to meet with his big Seventh-day Adventist money men. And he's really got to
right.
appeal to the
right.
Adventist vote by...
Right.
I mean, it just didn't come up. Like, occasionally you'd meet a Seventh-day Adventist candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives or for the county supervisors, and that was fascinating. I loved that. It's like, wow, that's amazing. But still, you're still very much on the periphery. Then the other thing that I began to fall in love with was sports, professional sports, and I never came across great Seventh-day Adventist professional sportsmen because they kept the Sabbath.
Right. Right.
And so that bugged me for some reason.
Well, I think it's right that Adventist Sabbatarianism really constrained Adventists professionally, and I think it really affected the demographics of Adventism, because you had, what are your professional options? Well, you can either be self-employed in one way or another. You can be a self-employed professional, or you can work for a church institution. But, certainly in the 19th century, if you were working as an employee someplace, the odds were you were working a 6-day week. And so you got, it seems to me, several generations of Adventists until the rise of the 5-day work week, who were just acculturated to seek either church employment or self-employment. And I think it really shaped the sorts of kind of socioeconomic characteristics of Adventists because of that. You just didn't have people, and obviously there are other reasons for this too, but the Sabbath is still certainly an issue here. You don't have people, for instance, typically taking significant corporate jobs, because that, the 5-day week is just not often an option in many of those settings. And so, yes, not only sports and the military, but I think a number of other...
And then culturally, there weren't great Seventh-day Adventist filmmakers or novelists or playwrights or painters or...
Right, I guess Adventists are just the latest in a long series of folks since Plato who were scared of the artists. It's really, really only classical musicians. It's, really, I think the only kinds of artists Adventists have really embraced.
Now, I loved the lifestyle, and I really had no doubts until we were pushed out of the church that it was like the true, that it was a great way to live, and because you'd get so much, propaganda is a harsh word, but you'd get taught so much that this is the healthiest way to live, and you'd see studies, and it really did seem like the healthiest way to live, and I knew so many good people, smart people, educated people because of my dad and growing up on college campuses, and so I loved that, and so the lifestyle is great, but it's not enough. Like maybe 1 or 2 generations will stay Adventist for the lifestyle, but unless you believe the unique spiritual theological truths of the faith, it's hard to be really passionate about being Adventist. It's hard to be passionate about the health message unless you see the health message as part of theological truth.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
And so I'm sure, because my dad got kicked out of church employment in 1980, so we moved out of the Adventist church by the time I was in 8th grade. So I didn't get to go from 12 years of Adventist schooling and then into a secular university. But I'd have to imagine that no more but no less than any other religious upbringing, hitting a secular university would have to be a shock.
Sure.
To a Seventh-day Adventist. Like, it's not incompatible with Adventism, but it's not... The more secular education you get, the less generally religious you get, no matter what your religion. Right? So what's been the experience of... Have many of your peers dropped away from going to secular universities, or what have you noticed?
It's interesting. I think lots and lots of the people who were my peers and friends went through Adventist undergraduate educational experiences. A lot of people went to La Sierra. Then, of course, a lot of us went on to graduate professional programs elsewhere. And I don't know whether that's the driving force or not. I think it would be overly simplistic to just say there's one factor. But I do find, just as a general rule, that as somebody who is quite involved in Adventist church life, I'm in a distinct minority among the people I've known well who are my peers. I can talk about the experience in non-Adventist